Okay. Oh, so hello guys, uh, welcome to our channel Study Medicine with me. And in this video we're going to study clinical neuroanatomy from Richard Snell's book of anatomy, which is 7th edition. And today we're going to go live on, I'm going to read live neuroscience. And today the topic I'm going to read is uh, the first chapter of neuroscience, that is introduction to central nervous system. Before that, I'll be looking at the various part of the nervous systems, including brain and so let's study. So this is frontal pole. Okay, this is frontal part of the brain. This is frontal lobe. Okay, this is frontal lobe, and this is central sulcus. Central sulcus is very important to note. This is precentral sulcus. Precentral sulcus, which is in front of the central sulcus, and this one is postcentral gyrus. Okay, postcentral gyrus. Generally, the gyrus are the elevated part of the nervous system, and sulcus on the other hand is depressed part of the nervous system. So this elevated part is actually this is the elevated part that is of the brain. So therefore this is a gyrus, and this is postcentral gyrus. On the other hand, this depressed part just below the postcentral gyrus is postcentral sulcus. It is similar in case of precentral parts, such as precentral gyrus, which is this one is elevated part, so this is not precentral gyrus. However, this one is depressed part, so this is precentral sulcus. And the posterior part consists of a occipital pole, and this one is a occipital lobe as a whole. This is parietal lobe. How can we differentiate the frontal lobe and parietal lobe? With the help of this sulcus, which is central sulcus. This sulcus, which is central sulcus, it is on both sides. So above, in front of it, it is frontal lobe, and beside it is parietal lobe. And this one is left central hemisphere. Okay, left center. So this was all about the view of the brain from upward. This is upward view of the brain. Now this is the bottom view of the brain, inferior view of the brain. So in inferior view we can see the frontal lobe. This is the same frontal lobe out here. Okay, and this one is longitudinal fissure. It was visible from up as well, but not that prominent. However, this is more prominent in case of inferior view. Okay, this is olfactory tract. Olfactory is generally associated with smelling. This is olfactory tract. Right cerebral hemisphere. Okay, this one is obviously right cerebral hemisphere, and this is left cerebral hemisphere. This one is temporal lobe, which is generally present laterally and responsible for hearing. So it is present near the ears. So it is temporal lobe. This is optic chiasma. I'll be talking about it later. However, it is a point in which both the nerves of the optic nerve actually crosses each other. Okay, this one is a midbrain. It is a part of a brainstem. This is oculomotor nerve. It is one of the cranial nerve. This is pons, also known as pons varioli, and this one is a pyramid. This is part of a brainstem. I'll be talking about it later. And this is olive. This is cerebellum, also known as little brain, and this one is a medulla oblongata. So this was all about the inferior view of the brain. Now let's come to the anterior view of the brain. So what's like from anterior portion? So from anterior we can obviously identify the frontal pole, and just up to the frontal pole there is a frontal lobe. This one is frontal lobe. These are the frontal lobe. This is right cerebral hemisphere and this is left cerebral hemisphere. And below the prominent groove is longitudinal fissure. And okay, superior frontal gyrus. This one is superior frontal gyrus. Okay, temporal lobe. This one is temporal lobe, which is present laterally. Okay, and this one is medulla oblongata, which is part of a brainstem. Pons variouli is up to the upside of the medulla oblongata, and it is also part of a brainstem. Basically, the brain actually consists of three main parts. No, central nervous system actually consists of three main parts. The brain, the brainstem, and the spinal cord. So here this is brain, this is brainstem up to here, and this one is spinal cord. So what is the difference between brain and mid and brainstem and spinal cord? The brain is one of the most prominent bulging that is present within the skull. However, the brainstem is generally present with below the foramen, below the skull. So and it consists of three main parts and one cerebellum. This one is cerebellum. If you don't know the cerebellum, it is right here. This one is the cerebellum. This one is the cerebellum, and spinal cord is generally present below the brainstem. Brainstem is named so because it is just like a stem of the leaves. For an instance, this one is a leaf, and the less prominent part just below the leaf is called stem. Just like it, this one is a brain, and the less prominent part that is present below is called stem, and the downward part is called spinal cord. And spinal cord is present within the vertebral column, which we will be talking about in later, I think. So let's go to the another picture. This is left cerebral hemisphere. Okay, this is left cerebral hemisphere. This is parieto-occipital sulcus. This is occipital lobe. Okay, this is the posterior view of the brain. From posterior view we will be obviously seeing the occipital pole, and occipital lobe pole is actually present in occipital lobe, and parieto-occipital sulcus is this one is called parieto-occipital sulcus. I should be looking at it. I don't know what it is. And vermis of cerebellum. So vermis of cerebellum. We will be talking about in cerebellum chapter. It is one of the prominent structure within the cerebellum, which is present between two lobes of the cerebellum. Or this is inferior. Okay, there is also something called as inferior cerebral peduncle. Okay, gracile tubercle. I don't know what it is. I should be looking at it. There is something called as cuneate tubercle, medulla oblongata, left cerebral hemisphere, cavity of fourth ventricle. Okay, so this was about the view of the brain. We almost identify all the important parts of the brain. Now let's move on to the next page, and here we are seeing the side view of the brain. Right lateral view of the brain. Okay, the number one is right lateral view of the brain. So this is obvious. So as a name, so this one is a right lobe of the brain, and in right lobe of the brain what we can see is let's start from the frontal pole. We can see this one is a frontal lobe. Obviously this is middle frontal gyrus. Okay, this one is this prominent structure is middle frontal gyrus. This is superior frontal gyrus. Okay, superior frontal gyrus, precentral sulcus. Okay, at first we need to identify the central sulcus. So this one is central sulcus. Thus in front of it there is a precentral gyrus, the elevated part, and just in front of it there is something depressed structure, the ferry-like structure that goes, and it is called precentral sulcus. It is similar in case of posterior part, where there is presence of elevated part which is known as postcentral gyrus, and just beside the postcentral gyrus there is depressed part which is called postcentral sulcus. So we need to know what does the gyrus and the sulcus means. So sulcus is basically the depressed part and gyrus is the elevated part which is found in the brain. The brain has various to increase the surface area of the brain so that it could accommodate in the little space of the skull. If you unfold this brain, the size of the brain would be 1.5 meters square, which is fascinating because it generally looks smaller than this. So the increased surface area helps to accommodate more amount of neurons in the brain as well. So there is something called as parieto-occipital sulcus in the posterior part, and we can see the occipital lobe as well in this right right lateral view, and there is also presence of a cerebellum below it, and medulla oblongata, which is also a part of a brainstem. And here we can see the okay. So this one is very important. This one is lateral sulcus. Lateral sulcus is also one of the most prominent sulcus that is present, and it actually helps in separation of this temporal lobe from the frontal and parietal lobe. And lateral sulcus is also one of the prominent. I have already talked about it. There's superior temporal gyrus. Okay, this is superior temporal gyrus. Okay, this one is the middle temporal gyrus, and this is the inferior temporal gyrus. This is right cerebral hemisphere. Okay, medulla oblongata. This one is medulla oblongata. Okay, now this is a medial view of the right side of the brain. This one is a medial view of the right side of the brain. So what are the structures that we can see? This is actually the coronal cross sections. This one is the okay, corpus callosum. First structure we can see is corpus callosum. So what is corpus callosum? Corpus callosum is basically a structure that connects two hemispheres of the brain, and this is the structure when we cut the brain from the middle, and the corpus structure is look like this. So just below the corpus callosum there is something called as septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum, this black structure, and the fornix is the below part, and there is something called as fornix which is below the septum pellucidum. This one is fornix, and anterior commissure. This one is anterior commissure. Okay, let's see the other structures. This is cingulate gyrus, and this one is a central gyrus. Okay, central sulcus from the medial view of the right side of the brain, of the mid sagittal section of the brain, of the right mid sagittal section of the brain. The singular gyrus can be viewed like this, and this one is a cerebral aqueduct. Okay, this one is cerebral aqueduct of the brain. This is parieto-occipital sulcus. This is okay, cuneus. Calcarine sulcus is present in the occipital lobe, and we can view it. Vermis of cerebellum. Okay, since this is mid-sagittal view of the cerebellum as well, we can see the vermis, but we cannot see it connecting two hemisphere of the cerebellum because this is mid-sagittal sections. And cavity of fourth ventricle, we could also see the cavity of fourth ventricle. It is right here. This cavity, this is hollow black structure. There's been a hollow black structure. This is the cavity of the brain. This one is pons varioli, and just below it there is medulla oblongata. And what is temporal lobe? Okay, this one is temporal lobe, which is present laterally to the cerebrum. Optic chiasma. So optic chiasma in this case is right here. In case of inferior view of the brain, we can see the optic chiasma right here. But in this case, the optic chiasma is present right here. Anterior commissure. Okay, so let's look at these cross sections of the brain. So these are coronal section of base passing to the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So ventricular system, for those who doesn't know about the ventricular systems are basically a system which provides the nourishment to the brain. Since the nourishment to the brain, actually the ventricle consists of a cerebral. This ventricle is actually a space within the brain which consists of a cerebral spinal fluid, and cerebral spinal fluid plays in nourishment of the brain, protection of the brain, nourishment and protection of the brain. So the ventricle, so we could, on cross sections of the brain, we could see the ventricles. Okay, so here we can see the lateral ventricles of the brain. What are the other systems that we could see? Okay, this is lentiform nucleus. We'll be studying it about in near. This one is septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum is the septa that divides both of the ventricles, I guess. Corpus callosum is just a white matter that is present above the fourth lateral ventricle. Insula. This one is insula. I don't know what does that mean. This one is obviously a lateral sulcus because the temporal lobe is right here, I guess. And claustrum. I don't know what it is. I will be starting about it later. Claustrum. So what we don't know, we'll be circling and ticking it. So I don't know calls claustrum. Insula. Okay, I know what is insula. Insula is actually this is one of the lobe of a lobe when we elevate the lateral sulcus. When we elevate the lateral sulcus, we could see a lobe of the temporal, one of the part of the temporal lobe, that is insula. So we could view it by elevating the lateral sulcus. And so this is left. So this one is lateral ventricle. Within it there is septum pellucidum. We don't know the corpus callosum. I guess it is a white matter, one of the white matter of the brain. But we'll be studying about its functions. And this one is lentiform. Okay. So this one right here actually only shows the third ventricle of the brain, and actually the ventricles are like this. They ultimately the two ventricles are ultimately unite to give out the third ventricles, first, second, and third. There's nothing called as a first and second ventricle. There is only third ventricle and fourth ventricle. It is because the two lateral ventricles are of same size. We couldn't and they run parallelly to each other, so we couldn't say we cannot give one number one and two those ventricles, because those are basically same in size. But this third ventricle is just one in number, and in this structure we could see third ventricle. This one right here, the small portion, is third ventricle, and we could see other structures as well. For example, this corpus callosum, the fornix is seen as well. I don't know what it is, but I would be looking at it. And there's also something called as lateral ventricles, and this is third ventricle. Okay, lateral ventricle, we could see lateral ventricle and the small part of lateral ventricle in these sections. These are the lateral ventricle. Above it as well there is corpus callosum. We don't know about the fornix, but there it was not here, but it is here now. And caudate nucleus. Okay, third ventricle. Lentiform nucleus are present here as well. There was no lentiform nucleus out here, but there's been a lentiform nucleus right here. And this is mammillary body that is present, okay, below these ventricles. And optic nerve, as we could see from the inferior view of the brain, it is present inferiorly to the third ventricle as well. Okay, what is this section of the brain is called? So it is actually called, okay, I'll be looking at it just a minute. Just a minute. Okay, this one is optic nerve, corpus callosum. We knew the corpus callosum. This is collateral plexus of lateral ventricle. This is pons varolii. So this one right here is the mammillary bodies, and this one is the view of the pons varolii. Pons, if you don't know, pons is actually brainstem, part of a brainstem, collateral plexus of a lateral ventricle. So I will be talking about collateral plexus of lateral ventricle. I just forgot about it, but I will be recalling it in this chapter. So corpus callosum. This one right here is a corpus callosum. So anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this one, what is this figure? That this one is basically cross sections for at the level of what? Horizontal section. This one is horizontal section of the cerebellum showing the lentiform nucleus, caudate nucleus, thalamus, and the internal capsule. So the things that we'll be looking at it is lentiform nucleus, caudate nucleus, thalamus, and internal capsule. Lentiform nucleus. So let's look at it. Anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. This is anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. Okay. Internal capsule. This one right here is the internal capsule. Genu of a corpus callosum. This one is genu of a corpus callosum. Head of a caudate. This one is a head of a caudate nucleus. Anterior column of the fornix. Okay, claustrum. So there are lots of new things out here which I don't know, which I don't remember. So we'll be looking at the structure that I know. So this one right here is anterior horn of the lateral ventricle that I know, and this one is a third ventricle. Okay, this one is a third ventricle. Okay, posterior horn of the lateral. Okay, so anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and this one is a posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. I'm still not getting it. Which one is the? I'm not getting an idea which one is the frontal lobe of the brain right here, out here. Okay, how can I know that? I think this one is the frontal lobe because the horizontal sulcus is more prominent out here. This one is posterior most, but this is posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. I'm not getting it actually. Yeah, this must be a posterior horn. To the anterior side of the brain there is posterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and towards the posterior side of the brain there is presence of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So what are the structures that we can see? So head of the caudate nucleus, just below the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle there is caudate nucleus. Okay. Corpus callosum. This is a genu of a corpus callosum. Okay, genu of an internal capsule. This one is a genu of an internal capsule. This one is a thalamus. This one is splenium of the corpus callosum. This one is splenium of the corpus callosum. Caudate nucleus. Caudate nucleus. Caudate nucleus. Claustrum, glutamen, globus pallidus. Three structures of lentiform nucleus. These are the three structures of lentiform nucleus. Genu of internal capsule. This one is genu of internal capsule. Genu of intercapsule and intercapsule. So what are the structures that we need to understand in this figure? The lentiform nucleus, caudate nucleus, thalamus, and the internal capsule. So where is thalamus? Thalamus is generally present in the middle. Yeah, this one is thalamus. This one is third ventricle. Thus lateral to the third ventricle, it means of thalamus. So this is globus pallidus, okay, putamen colostrum, okay, third ventricle, internal capsule, posterior horn of the lateral ventricle, splenium, upper corpus callosum, okay. So okay, I'm back. I had some work to do. So thalamus and internal capsule, bottom. At very bottom there is oblique coronal section of the brain. Oblique coronal. This one is oblique coronal section. Okay, this one is oblique coronal section of the brain. So section is actually done obliquely. And what are the structures that we could see? We could see the pons variorum, medulla oblongata, which is a part of a brainstem, and this one right here is a third stem, third ventricle. This one must be the no, third ventricle, inferior part of third ventricle. Okay, this one right must be a lateral ventricle. This one right here above the lateral ventricle, it must be a corpus callosum. Corpus caudate nucleus is just lateral to the lateral ventricle. Lateral to the lateral ventricle, there is caudate nucleus. Thalamus is lateral to the third ventricle. Okay, lentiform nucleus is lateral to the thalamus. Internal capsule is so. Let's move on to the next figure. So what are the things that we could view from this figure? So this in this figure we can see olfactory bulb. Okay, olfactory bulb. Okay, this one is bulb-like structure. Let's view it. So suppose this is olfactory nerve, olfactory tract. There is this prominent bulb-like structure at the end, which is called as olfactory bulb. So this one is olfactory bulb. So this one is olfactory tract, and there is something called as optic nerve as well, which is actually present in optic chiasma. So this one right here is optic chiasma. This is optic nerve. And this one is optic tract. Sorry. Just below it is optic tract. Optic tract. Okay, oculomotor nerve is actually it is basically a cranial nerve. Okay, this one is trochlear nerve. This is also cranial nerve, trigeminal nerve. There are different trigeminal nerves. So what are the section? What is this section of brain? This is actually inferior view of the brain showing cranial nerves. Okay, so obviously we could see many cranial nerves, which includes optic nerves, olfactory nerves, optic nerves, olfactory tract, basically olfactory nerve, and there is also called something called as oculomotor nerve. There is something called as trochlear nerve. There is something called as trigeminal nerve, and this one right here is a spinal root of accessory nerve, and this one is root of a hypoglossal nerve. This is vestibulocochlear nerve. This one is trigeminal nerve. This one is trigeminal nerve. Root of hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal. So glossal just means the tongue. Glossal means the tongue. Vestibulocochlear. Vestibule and vestibulocochlear. We could always break down the terms. So vestibules and cochlea. Vestibulocochlear nerve. Trigeminal nerve. There's nothing called as Gemini. However, we cannot break this term. This trigeminal nerve, we cannot break it. So obviously, because we see various nerves, cranial nerves out here. So let's move on to the next figure. So next figure, this one is little closer view of the inferior view of the brain. We could see. So what is this? In-glass info. Okay, obviously it is in-glass view. So we could always see this in bulb of the olfactory nerve. This one is longitudinal fissure, gyrus rectus. Okay, those lateral to the longitudinal fissure. There is gyrus rectus on both sides of both hemisphere. Okay, so optic chiasma. We could always see the optic chiasma on cusp of the brain. On cusp of the brain. I should be looking at it. Cross cerebri. This one right, a small part is called cross cerebri. Mammillary body. This one, the bulged part is called mammillary body. Posterior perforating substance on the in the floor of interpeduncular fossa. Okay, oculomotor nerve. So what are so this one is oculomotor nerve. This is also a cranial nerve. This right here is a part of a brainstem, which is pons varioli, and this one is olive, which is actually a part of a medulla oblongata, I guess, and this one is inferior cerebral peduncle, which is also the part of a medulla oblongata. This is anterior median fissure, which is median part of the medulla oblongata, and this one actually is also present within the it is also present in the spinal cord, anterior median. It runs throughout the medulla oblongata, from medulla oblongata up to the spinal cord, all the way back to the L3 vertebra, which is at the ending of which is actually the ending of the spinal cord. Below it, there is presence of something called as phylum terminale. This one is phylum terminale, which is actually attached to the coccyx bone. So what is the structure? This is actually the structure of the cerebellum. So what are the things that we could see? So what are the things that we could see? This one is the part of a cerebellum. So let's see, posterior view of the brainstem. Okay, brainstem. The greater part of the cerebellum had been removed. The greater part of the cerebellum had been removed to expose the floor of the fourth ventricle. So we could see fourth ventricle in the upper figure. So let's look at it. So midbrain. Okay, this right here is the midbrain. Median sulcus. Okay, this is the median sulcus. Median eminence. Okay, this one is right here is median eminence. However, I'm getting confused. What is median sulcus and medial eminence? The sulcus generally means the depressed part. So this black part, this black depressed part is obviously this black depressed part is it is sulcus, and this one right here is medial eminence. So facial colliculus, let's look at the facial colliculus. This one is a facial colliculus, and this is sulcus limitans. I should be studying sulcus limitans. This is a part of a brainstem. I should be studying hypoglossal triangle, stria medullaris. Stria medullaris. This one is stria medullaris. This is hypoglossal triangle, and this is vagal triangle. Okay, this something called as vagal triangle. Gracile tubercle. Okay, it is below the vagal triangle. This gracile tubercle. Okay. So this must be the posterior must view, I guess. Let's say superior view of the cerebellum showing the vermis. Cerebellum showing the vermis, right and left cerebral hemisphere. So it's called. So the cerebellum is basically called a little brain because it has something similar with that of with a brain, which is basically a cerebrum. It is the similar structure. It is also could be divided. It also can be divided into two hemispheres, right hemisphere and left hemisphere, and it consists of something called as a vermis, which divides it. So this is basically the superior aspect of the vermis. Okay, this is superior aspect of the vermis. Okay, this is culmen. This is this declive. This one right here is a median lobe. Okay, there it also could be divided into various lobes. Hemisphere could be divided into various lobes. This one is a medial lobe. Okay, we could see some fissure. This one is primary fissures. This one is primary fission. That means here we could see we are not able to see some distinctive primary fissure, but there is presence of primary. I guess this one is a primary fissure. This one is the primary fissure right here in this lobe, in this right lobe, I guess. Yes, and this one is a primary fissure in case of left lobe, medial lobe. So this obviously this would be a medial lobe, left cerebellum. Okay, decline. So we just look at the structures of the cerebellum, which is a little brain. So on our next figure, inferior view of the cerebellum. So this one right here is the inferior view of the cerebellum, showing the vermis and right and left cerebral hemisphere. Right and left cerebral hemisphere. This one right here is the right cerebral hemisphere, and this one is the left cerebral hemisphere. Inferior view of the cerebellum showing the vermis and right and left cerebral hemisphere. Okay, tonsil. So cerebellum actually consists of a structure that is tonsil, and the other part which consists of a tonsil is our buccal cavity consists of a tonsil as well. Over there the tonsil is actually a lymphoid cells, collection of lymphoid tissue, I guess. Here it is present within the cerebellum. Flocculus. This structure right here is called flocculus. This is central lobe, inferior aspect of vermis. This one is tuber. Tonsil, middle cerebral peduncle. Okay. So this one is basically a mid-sagittal view of the right hemisphere, I guess. Let's see. Okay, right side of the brain. Enlarged medial view of the right side of the brain following the mid-sagittal section. So it is a mid-sagittal section of the right hemisphere. So what does it show? It shows the continuity of the central canal. Central canal, fourth ventricle, cerebral aqueduct, third ventricle, intends to the lateral ventricle to the interventricle. So let's see. So we can see the central sulcus right here. This one is obviously the cingulate gyrus, which is just present above the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum is a structure that combines both of the hemisphere. And so let's see, site of the third ventricle. Okay, this one is the site of a third ventricle, as it says. I don't know how it is third ventricle. Third ventricle is generally space within. Okay, this is mid-sagittal section, so it could be site of third ventricle. Okay, this is thalamus. This one right here is thalamus. Posterior commissure. This one should be anterior commissure. Okay, this one is fornix. This one is the corpus callosum, and below it is fornix. Okay, this right here, interventricular foramen. Okay, interventricular lateral ventricle. This one is the interventricular lateral ventricle. Okay. Interventricular foramen or the interventricular lateral ventricle. Genu corpus callosum. Okay, this is corpus callosum, and this is the genu of the corpus callosum. Genu of the corpus callosum. Rostrum. This one right here. This structure is the rostrum. Lamina terminalis. Okay, this one right here is lateral lamina terminalis. Okay, as we have already talked, this is optic chiasma, which is more prominent in the inferior view of the brain. This is tuberous cinerum. Okay, this one right here is a right hypothalamus. Okay, mammillary body. This one right here is a mammillary body. This one is pons varioli, which is actually a part of a brainstem. Cerebral aqueduct of a brain of the midbrain. This one is cerebral aqueduct of the midbrain. Okay, fourth ventricle. So lateral ventricle was out up here. Up here, this one is lateral ventricle. This one is lateral ventricle, and the fourth ventricle is out here, just in front of the cerebellum, which we call the little brain. So this one is cerebellum. Thus, in front of it, there is presence of a fourth ventricle. Central canal of the medulla oblongata. So it is showing the central canal right here. I don't know what it is. We'll be studying it. So there are some parts of the cerebellum shown as well. So let's see the parts. Vermis of the cerebellum. Okay, as we have already talked, vermis is basically a it's a structure that connects two hemispheres of the cerebellum. It's two hemispheres of the cerebellum. This one is two hemispheres of the cerebellum. This one middle structure is called vermis. Cerebellum also is basically similar to the butterfly. We could compare it with the butterfly. For instance, this one is the wings of the butterfly, and the middle structure is the body of the butterflies. And in case of cerebellum, this is vermis and this is hemisphere, similar to the butterfly. Foramen of Magendie. Now this one plays a very important role in case of foramen of Magendie, plays a very important role in case of cerebrospinal fluid function of flow of the cerebrospinal fluid, which we'll be talking in next chapter. So this was all. Okay, so we just finished the atlas of the brain. We just went out briefly on the atlas of the brain. So we just went briefly on the atlas of the brain. Now we'll be talking about the introduction and organization of the nervous system. But before that, I'm going to take a small break. So you guys listen to this music. I will return within 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere. So hey guys, I'm back after 5 minutes break, and let's study again. So we're about to start the introduction and organization of nervous systems. Okay, so let's begin. So let's go through the chapter, just a brief first, then we'll be studying it. So what is the objective of the chapters? To understand the basic organization of main structures that form the nervous system. Okay, basic organization of the nervous system. To gain three-dimensional appreciations of the parts of the brain and their relative position to one another. Okay, so central and peripheral nervous system, this one. Okay, autonomic nervous system. So major division of a central nervous system. So the parts of the central nervous system is given, for instance, spinal cord. And okay, the figures of the spinal cord, the base part of the brain is given in picturized form. Central nervous system. The main division of central nervous system. Okay. So what is this? Major division of central and peripheral nervous systems. Okay, the divisions are given. Okay. Sacral and coccyx. Deal. Structure of the spinal cords are given. About the structure. Okay, the brain is given. Hindbrain, middle oblongate point, cerebellum is given. The figure. This is a figure of the spinal cord going through the vertebra, I guess. We'll be talking about it, and this is a figure of outermost scope of the brain, I guess. Yep. Okay, midbrain, cerebellum. Photo micrograph, several large nodules surrounding it. Okay. Middle oblongate, foramen magnum, spinal cord. Okay, just a minute. There's something wrong with the music. But okay. So this one, so here we can see the spinal cord. So and various part of the brainstem, middle oblongate, foramen magnum. Okay, foramen magnum. So this is it. So fetus with the brain and spinal cord. This is the fetus with the brain and spinal cord. So this one basically explains the size of the spinal cord, I guess. Yep. And this is the brain structure. This is spinal cord with this processes giving various part of the supplying to the various part of the body. This one is explaining. So basically these are explaining about the spinal cord. Okay, this one is also explaining about the spinal cord. Okay, lateral view of the brain. Okay, what is this? Major division of peripheral nervous systems. This is brain stems. Central system to the brainstem and the cerebellum. Okay. What is this? This is corona radiata. Corona radiata is called so because corona. Come on, corona. Have we ever heard this term before? Yes, we have. Corona. So corona radiata is just fancy. They say it is fancy, and it is actually fancy. So, so it shows that basically it's explained about the coronary interruption. This one is actually about the ventricle, I guess. No, listen to the ventricle. Okay. Cranial and spinal nerves. Ganglias, autonomic ganglia, all the development of the nervous system. This one is actually about the top. Okay, so this is the development of the nervous system. This is formation of a neural tube. This one is neural tube. Yes. What is this? This is neuroquest and neuroquest gives the development of what? Ganglion cells, Schwann cells, superneural metal. Okay. Melanocytes have melanocytes plays a very important role in sleep-wake cycles. Okay, the melanin. Okay. The primary division of the developing brains, vesicles, midbrains, hindbrains. Okay. So this one is also about the development of the brain. Relationship of spinal cord segment to the vertebral nerves. Injuries to the spinal cord of the brain. Spinal cord injuries. spinal nerve injuries. This is an intervertebral herniated intervertebral disc. Cervical disc herniation, lumbar disc herniation. Okay. This one must be a pathology of the spinal cord, I guess. Annulus fibrosis. Nucleus pulposus is okay. I don't know what is nucleus pulposus. Okay, so there's something like this. Spinal tap or lumbar puncture. Okay, there is something. There's a paper about it as well in this book. Caudal anesthesia, head injuries. Okay, this one is cauda equina. This one right here. This one is dura mater. Dura mater actually extends up to the second sacral vertebra. And below the second sacral vertebra, the one leg filum terminalis goes. So I don't know. Okay, that was also random information. Brain injuries. So because brain injuries, traumatic brain injury followed by an explosion or blast. Intracranial hemorrhage. Okay, subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage. The second baby syndrome. Okay, the second baby. I need to study this. I don't know what it is, but it seems interesting. Let's study. Infantile heredity is the most common cause of traumatic death in infancy. It's believed that sudden deceleration, which occurs when an infant is held by the arms or trunks and shaken, or the head is forcibly struck against the hard surface, is responsible for the brain injuries. Okay. So basically the baby, when the head of the baby is shaken, there might be an injuries. Biochemical studies have shown that the rotation of the floating brain about the center of gravity causes deep brain injuries, including diffuse axonal injury and subdural hematoma. In second baby syndrome, major rotation forces have to occur that clearly exceed those encountered in normal child playing activities. Most cases of the second baby syndrome take place during the first years of life, and they are usually restricted to infants under 3 years of age. Common symptoms include lethargy, irritable seizures, altered muscle symptoms, indicating raised intracranial pressure such as impaired consciousness, vomiting, breathing abnormalities, apnea. In severe cases, the baby may be unresponsive, the condyles are bulging, and the child may be retinal hemorrhage. Spinal tap may be revealed blood. Okay. So this, in a short, this is a deformity of the baby when he or she is held unwisely, causing the head of the baby to rotate or hide on the hard substances. Basically a result of improper handling of the baby. So you must handle the baby properly, otherwise he or she could have the second baby syndrome. Okay, this one is about tumors, CT scan, MRI, positron emission tomography. So we'll be studying less about the clinical aspects. We'll be skipping off this part, or we'll be going to the brief. So this was what I was searching. I was searching for the questions. Okay, there are a lot of questions. These are the MCQs. Okay. First, we need to see. We'll see the questions. Then we'll be watching out the. And then we'll go into the chapters, and at last we'll be coming to the questions. Okay, and let's see what we'll learn. 45 years old. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Clinical problem solving questions. These are okay. A 45 years old was examined by a physician. Okay, and found to have carcinoma of the thyroid gland. Okay. Apart from the swelling in the neck, the patient also complained of back pain in the lower thoracic region. Okay, she has back pain as well as all of a sudden as a carcinoma in the thyroid with a burning soreness and irritating around the right side of the thorax over the 10th intercostal space. Although the back pain was often relieved by changing posture, it was worsened by coughing and sneezing. A lateral radiograph of the thoracic part of the vertebral column revealed a secondary carcinomatous deposit in the 10th thoracic vertebral body. Further physical examination revealed muscular weakness of the both legs. Using your knowledge of neuropathy, explain the following. The pain in the back. Okay. Explain the following. Using your knowledge of neuro-anatomy, explain the following. Okay, so what is the cause of the pain in the back? It might be due to the compression of a vertebra. I guess the soreness is over the 10th intercostal space due to accumulation of a cerebrospinal fluid. I guess the muscular weakness of both legs due to compression of a 10th vertebra. motor neurons that supply to that particular legs is okay. I think it is present in thoracic, something called it actually present from T12 to something lumbar 2, I guess. The motor neuron that supplies the legs are present within this. So if they get compressed, obviously there would be a weakness of both legs. Which segment was smile called like that? Okay, this one. So this one is one of the questions. I just want to see the answer, but let's not see the answer. Okay. 35 years old coal miner was crouching down the mine's face to inspect the drilling machine. Okay, large rock suddenly became dissolved from the roof of the mine shaft and struck the miner on the upper part of his back. Okay, upper part of his back. Examined by a physician showed an obvious forward displacement of upper thoracic spine. So his upper thoracic spine displaced forward on the 8th thoracic spine. Okay, what anatomical factors in thoracic region determine the degree of injury that may occur? What anatomical factors in the thoracic region determines the degree of injury that may occur at this one? No idea. It's very difficult for me. A 20-year-old man with a long history of tuberculosis of the lungs was examined by an orthopedic surgeon. Okay, because of sudden development of humpback, he also had symptoms of stabbing pain. There, 20-year-old man with a long history of tuberculosis after a long 20 years old. Okay, 50. So let's go to the question very fast. Video man working the morning with a severe pain near the lower most part of the leg and the left. So the pain was so referred along the side nerve, 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae. What is the MRI shows destruction of the intervertebral disc between the 5th and 6th cranial vertebrae using your knowledge and anatomy state which nerve was to the so principal on the side of the lower. No idea. Medical student offer to help for the fellow student straighten out the bumper of his forehead. Medical student offered to help a fellow student straighten up the bumper of his forehead spot. Okay, he had just finished the course of neuro-anatomy and was in poor physical shape. Okay, undaunted, he attempted to lift the end of the bumper while his friend stood on the other end. Suddenly, he felt an acute pain in the back that extended down the back and outer side of his right leg. Down the back and outer side of his right leg. He was examined by the orthopedic surgeon who found that the pain was accentuated by coughing. Okay, a lateral radiograph of the lumbar vertebral column revealed nothing abnormal. An MRI taken in the sagittal plane showed a small posterior prolapse of the nucleus pulposus. Okay, small posterior prolapse of the nucleus pulposus in the disc between the 5th lumbar and the 1st sacral vertebra. A diagnosis of herniation of the intervertebral disc between the 5th lumbar and the 5th sacral vertebra was made. Using your knowledge of the neuro-anatomy, explain the symptoms of the disease which smile were pressed on. We'll be studying about it eventually. Okay, next question. So a fiber was seen in emergency department. Diagnosis of acquired meningitis was made. Okay, the resident decided to perform a lumbar puncture in order to confirm the diagnosis. Using your knowledge of the neuroanatomy, where would we perform lumbar puncture? Okay, name in order the structure placed when a lumbar puncture needle enters the lumbar. So I think I know this answer. So we should perform the lumbar puncture in L3 vertebra, I guess, because in case of no, this is still difficult, but of the adult human vertebra is up to the level of L2 vertebra. In case of child, it is little more extend down up to the L3 vertebra. So we could perform it in the parts preceding this L3 vertebra. Okay, what is structure passed when the lumbar puncture is needed? So there are some structures including the muscles, the bones, the ligament present in between them. So we need to know this. The pregnant woman told her friend that she hated the idea of going through the pain of childbirth, and that she equally detested the thought of having general anesthesia. Either a local anesthetic technique that will provide painless labor. I don't know. I should study. There are many questions. While crossing the road, a patient was struck on the right side of the head. He fell on the ground, didn't lose the consciousness. After reaching her then giving out the air, very confused and irritable. Later he staggered and fell onto the floor. When questioned, he was seemed to be drowsy and twitching of the lower left half of his face and left arm much noted. A diagnosis of epidural muscle spasm whose artery is likely to have been damaged. So we need to know about the arteries. What causing dullness and muscle wasting? So, okay. 45 years old was examined with neuroscience and found to have intracranial tumor. She complained of a severe headache. While examining the unconscious 18-year-old man admitted to the emergency department of motorcycle accident, he was on the accident. Then the medical student will happen to the pain and accident which is suddenly taking to the skull. What the matter of the incident? Okay. The review questions. This one is MCQs. The spinal cord has should have studied tests rather than those clinical related. A 69-year-old man was admitted to distributed compartment black telegraphic. Examination of lumbar region of the vertebral column reveals significant narrowing of the spinal cord caused by the advanced osteoarthritis. Explain the discomfort in the lower back experienced by the patient. Explain the discomfort in the lower back experienced by the patient. Say the most likely cause of the muscular paralysis of the left side of the body in the patient. Say the most likely cause of muscular paralysis in the left side of the body in the patient. Okay, left side epidural left side epidural. Okay, there is something I should study. Okay, say the most likely cause of the swelling over the temporal region in the patient. Temporal region. Superficial bruising of the skin, hemorrhage from the blood vessel, muscle, rupture of the right middle medulla, as well as edema on the skin, hemorrhage from the blood vessel to the superficial space. What does this do? Okay, some features have been disabled to avoid the potential security risks. Only enable these features if you trust the document. This document one time only, this document always. Can't I cancel? I don't want to go. Okay, I just. So what is the change that happened? Just a minute, we just overview some of the questions. Now we'll be going through the topic. We actually have an idea what are the things in this chapter. But this is very important to do. If you are reading any chapters, first go to the main highlighted topic, then go to the questions, and then study the chapter so that you could have an idea what knowledge are important to get. There are millions of information in this medical sectors. You cannot achieve all of those. You cannot just because although the brain has many capability as we are studying brain, but you cannot always get all this information because it is very difficult. It is difficult. It is kind of difficult. So guys, if you are new to our channel, you could just subscribe our channel. We'll be live very often. I think we'll be going live daily actually. So this helps for me, this helps for the people who want to study. Okay, so we have already gone through the questions, topics. Now let's go to the chapter. Introduction and organization of a nervous system. A 20 years old student was driving home from a party, okay, and crashed his car head on to the, okay. On examination in the emergency department of the local hospital, he had fractured dislocation of the 7th thoracic vertebra. Thoracic vertebra T7 was fractured and displaced with signs and symptoms of severe damage of the spinal cord. Okay, the spinal cord was damaged as well. Later, he was found to have paralysis of the left leg. Okay. Testing of cutaneous sensibility revealed a band of cutaneous hyperesthesia, increased sensitivity. Okay, cutaneous increased sensitivity extending around the abdominal wall on the left side at the level of umbilicus. Testing of cutaneous sensitivity revealed a band of cutaneous hyperesthesia extending around the abdominal wall on the left side of the umbilicus. Just below this, he had a narrow band of anesthesia and analgesia. Just below, okay, on the right side he had total anesthesia, thermal anesthesia, and partial loss of the sensation of touch of the skin of the abdominal wall below the level of umbilicus and involving the whole of the right leg. With the knowledge of anatomy, a physician knows that a fracture dislocation of the 7th thoracic vertebra would result in severe damage to the 10th thoracic segment of the spinal cord. Because of the small size of the vertebral foramen in the thoracic region, such an injury inevitably results in damage to the spinal cord. Knowledge of the vertebral levels of various segments of the spinal cord enables the physician to determine neurological deficit. The unequal sensory and motor losses of the two sides of the indicates left hemisections of the thoracic segment. All the afferent nerve fibers entering the cord at the point was interrupted. Loss of pain and thermal sensibility and the loss of the light touch below the level of umbilicus on the caused by intestinal. Okay, what has happened to this patient? A knowledge of the relationship between the spinal cord and its surrounding vertebral column must be understood. Okay, so we'll be studying this. Spinal cord and its surrounding vertebral column must be understood, it says. So, as it says, the various neurological deficits will become easier to understand after the reader has learned how the nervous pathway passes up and down through the spinal cord. This information will be discussed in chapter 4. Chapter 4, I need to go to the chapter 4. I need to finish these things. Okay, so we have already gone through these objectives, so let's go through it again. Understand the basic organization of the main structure of the nervous systems. Three-dimensional appreciation of the nervous systems. Okay, the nervous system and the endocrine system control the function of the body. Okay, the nervous system is composed basically of the specialized cells, okay, which function is to receive stimuli and transmit them to the effector organs. Obviously those are called nerves, I know that. When the muscular or glandular, okay, the sensory stimuli that arises are either outside or inside the body are correlated within the nervous systems, and the efferent impulse are coordinated so that the effector organs are harmoniously together for the well-being of the individual. In addition, the nervous system of the highest species has the ability to store the sensory information received during the past experience. This information, which when appreciated, is integrated with another nervous impulse and channeled into the common development pathway. Central and peripheral nervous systems. The nervous system is divided into two main parts for purposes of descriptions. Okay, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, I guess. So the central nervous system, as the term central defines, it actually consists of the brain and the spinal cord because they are present centrally in the body. And there is something called as peripheral nervous system, which is different from the central nervous system, as it is at the periphery. It is called peripheral nervous systems, and it consists of cranial and spinal nerves and their associated ganglia. So in the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord are the main centers where correlation and integration of nervous information occur. Both the brain and spinal cords are covered with the systems of membranes called meninges. Okay, we have very important organ that is called brain. We must have something to cover it up. So the covering structure is actually called meninges, and the suspended in the and are suspended. Okay, and the brains and the and just the covering is not enough, so they are actually suspended within the protective fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. That are further protected by the bones of the skull, and obviously just floating is not enough, so there is something called as bones that covers up the central nervous system, as it is one of the most important part of the body. So those bones are basically the skulls and the vertebral column. where the skull actually protects the brain and the vertebral column has main role in protecting the spinal cord. So the central nervous system is composed of large number of excitable nerve cells and their processes called neurons, obviously, which are supported by specialized tissues called which are supported by specialized tissues called neuroglia. So there is something called as neurons, and the side of the neuron there is something called as neuroglia. The neuroglia actually protects the neurons, just like the skull protects the brain. Yes. It is miniature skull, neuroglia. The long processes of a nerve are called axons and nerve fibers. Okay. The nerve fibers also have its branches and are called nerve fibers. Where nerves is basically a branch of the spinal cord and the brain. However, it also has some branching called as nerve fibers and the axons. So, going through the basic structure of the cells, nervous cells, it consists of a head, star like generally. Okay, this one is axons. Okay, the body consists of fibers called dendrites. These are the axons. These are also called as nerve fibers, which consists of a nucleus in between. It actually consists of a nucleus, yes. And some of them might have the myelin sheath that covers, and to the side it might consist of a neuroglial cells which protects as well. So this was all about the nerves. The interior of the central nervous system is organized into gray and white matter. Okay, nervous system consists of either gray matter or white matter. Gray matter consists of nerve cells embedded in the neuroglia. It has gray color. Obviously, it has gray color, so it's called gray. White matter consists of nerve fibers embedded in the So, gray matter consists of nerve cells embedded in the neuroglia. Nerve cells embedded in the neuroglia. Cells. White matter consists of nerve fibers embedded in the neuroglia. It has white color due to the presence of a lipid material in the myelin sheath of many nerve fibers. So, we have always studied the structure of the nerve right here. So this one is head and this one is nerve fiber. So the part where there is presence of a head is actually gray in color, and if there is many head present, it will eventually give the gray color of the entire part of the brain, and that particular part is called gray matter. So gray matter is basically a part of the brain which consists of various neuron cell head which result in gray color of the gray matter. And in case of white matter is basically a fiber. It's a collection of a fiber. So this is the white matter. This means a nerve fiber, and the collection of nerve fibers, many nerve fibers will eventually get the white color, and the particular part of the brain will eventually look as if it is white, and it is called white matter of the brain. So why it is called white matter of the brain? So why it is white? It is white because it consists of a myelin sheath, and myelin sheath is actually a white in color. So myelin sheath is not present in case of head, so therefore it is gray in color. So if there was an absence of myelin sheath, it would have been of gray color, I guess. Yes. So let's look in the peripheral nervous system. The canal becomes a bundle of nerve fibers, axons conduct information. Okay. In peripheral nervous systems, the canal and spiral nerves which consist of bundles of nerve fibers, information and functional nervous systems. Although the nerves are surrounding by the fiber streets, different part of the body, and they are relatively unprotected and commonly damaged by trauma. Okay, autonomic nervous system. We'll going through it very fast. The autonomic nervous system is a part of the nervous system concerned with the innervation of involuntary structures such as heart, involuntary structures, smooth muscles, glands. Autonomic means automatic. It doesn't require any care of the human brain. It doesn't. No. It doesn't. No. It requires a care of the human brain, but it is not. It occurs automatically. We don't need to expand our consciousness in it. It is distribution throughout the central and peripheral nervous systems. The autonomic systems may be divided into two parts, the sympathetic and parasympathetic parts, and in both parts there are afferent and efferent nerve fibers. The activities of the sympathetic part of the autonomic systems prepare the body for an emergency. The activities of the parasympathetic part of the autonomic systems are aimed at conserving and restoring the energy. Okay, so it consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic are basically activated when the during the time of emergency, and parasympathetic are activated in case of chilled out conditions. So there is basically conserving and restoring the energy in chilled out conditions. So parasympathetic are aimed at conserving and restoring the energies. Okay, major division of the central nervous systems. Before beginning the general description of the spinal cord and the brain, it has to understand the main feature of these structures. Okay, the general relationship with one another. General relationship with the spinal cord. So we are situated within the vertebral canal of the vertebral column and it's surrounded by 3 main ranges. Okay, DAP. We need to understand DAP. D means DAP, where D means dura mater, A means arachnoid matter, and P means pia matter. These are the covering of the brain as well as spinal cord. Okay, so dura mater, arachnoid matter, and pia matter. Further protection is covered by the cerebral spinal fluid, which surrounds the spinal cord in the subarachnoid space. Okay, the spinal cord is roughly cylindrical. Okay, and it begins superiorly at the foramen magnum. Okay, so foramen magnum is basically present in the skull, largest opening of the skull, which gives the opening to the spinal cord, where it is continuous with the medulla oblongata, and it is continuous with the medulla oblongata. It originates in the lumbar region. Below the spinal cord, tapers off into the conus medullaris. Okay. Below the spinal cord, tapers off into the conus medullaris from the apex to the conus piameter. Below the spinal cord, tapers into the conus medullaris from the apex to the conus medullaris. The condition is the back of the coccyx. Okay. Phylum terminal descends to attach the back of the coccyx. Along the entire length of the spinal cord are attached 31 pairs of spinal nerves by anterior and motor roots and posterior or sensory roots. Okay. Along the entire length of the spinal cord, there are 31 pairs. Very important to know this term. 31. There are 32 pairs of teeth and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So along the entire length of the spinal cord are 31 pairs of spinal nerves by the anterior or motor roots and the posterior or sensory roots. It is given in figure 1.6 and 1.7. Already looking at it. Each root is attached to the cord by the series of rootlets, which extend the whole length of the corresponding segment of the spinal cord. Each posterior nerve root possesses a posterior root ganglion, the cell which gives rise to the peripheral and central nerve fibers. So what does this figure shows? This sensory stimuli is going, and afferent nerve is going, taking it. The afferent nerve either goes up and it makes a memory, or coordination, efferent muscle and glands. Okay, it might memory. So relationship between the afferent sensory stimuli to memory bank. Okay, correlation and coordinating centers. So there is something called correlation and coordination centers, and there is something called memory. And the afferent nerve actually takes the information to the correlation and coordination center, which is and back to, and from there the efferent nerve is given to the particular muscles, glands, etc. So, however, there might be an exchange of information with the memory center, which might result in the formation of a memory. Okay. So this one is the structure of the brain, spinal cord, okay. This is the forebrain, this is the midbrain, this is the pons patellar, this is the middle oblongata, these are called hindbrain, these are called the midbrain. The midbrain is actually called midbrain. This is the front brain, this is the cerebellum, and this is the cervical, this is thoracic part, this is spinal cord part, this is lumbar part, this is sacral part, this is coccygeal part. So this one is phrenic, this one is phrenic, which gives the diaphragm, which gives the, as the name shows, which actually gives the gives it to the diaphragm. Brachial plexus, this one is brachial plexus. Brachial gives the support, gives to the muscles of the hands. And right, this is the right knob, the middle knob, is on and up. There's sciatic nerves as well. There's sciatic nerve, okay, sciatic nerves. This femoral nerve, obturator nerve, okay, sacral plexus, lumbar plexus. So why it is given? The part of the peripheral nerve system, sacral nerves have been omitted. Okay, and this is mean difference. So this basically shows the difference between shows the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. These are the central nervous system, and these are the peripheral nervous systems. However, it lacks the central cranial nerves. The major difference the central and peripheral nervous system. Okay, central nervous system brain, forebrain, cerebellum, diencephalon, midbrain, hindbrain. Okay, forebrain, cerebellum, diencephalon, midbrain, hindbrain, medulla pons, cerebellum. Okay, spinal cord consists of cerebral segment, cervical segment, thoracic segment, lumbar segment, sacral segment, coccygeal segment. And peripheral nervous system actually consists of cranial nerves and their ganglions of 12 pairs. Okay, spinal nerves and their ganglions 31 pairs. Okay, 8 cervical, 12. So that exits the vertebral column to the intervertebral foramina. So intervertebral foramina is very important to understand. So for this to understand, we need to understand the anatomy of the vertebra. So vertebra basically consists of a big hole. So this is a general vertebra. I'm not making it right, I know. So it actually is almost all the vertebra consists of a hole in between. This hole is actually called intervertebral foramina. So there are 8 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and 5 lumbar vertebrae, 5 sacral vertebrae, 1 coccygeal vertebra. No. These are the spinal nerves, cervical. Actually, there are 7 cervical vertebrae, but there are 8 spinal nerves. There are 12 thoracic vertebrae, and there is 12 thoracic nerve as well. This 5 lumbar, okay, 5 lumbar vertebrae, 5 spinal nerves, and so the only thing difference is coccygeal and the cervical. It has extra number, because there is only 7 of the cervical vertebra. However, there is 8 spinal nerves, cervical spinal nerve. 12 thoracic nerve, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, coccygeal. The coccygeal is only one piece. There is only one coccygeal spinal nerve. Structure of the spinal cord. So let's see the structure of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is composed of an inner core of a gray matter. The spinal cord actually consists of an inner core of a gray matter, which is surrounded by outer covering of the white matter. Okay. The gray matter is seen in cross section as an H-shaped pillar with anterior part of posterior gray matter all horns. Spinal cord is composed of an inner core of gray matter, which is surrounded by an outer covering of the white matter. The gray matter is seen on cross section as an H-shaped pillar with anterior posterior gray columns or horns, mutated by a thin gray commissus containing the small central canal. The white matter, for purposes of descriptions, may be divided into anterior, lateral, or posterior white columns. Brain. Okay. The brain lies in the cranial cavity and is continuous with the spinal cord through the foramen magnum. It is surrounded by 3 meninges: the rear matter, the acna matter, and the PM matter, and these are continuous with the spinal cord. Okay. The brain is divided into 3 major divisions. These are ascending out of the spinal cord. Okay. These are ascending out of the spinal cord: the hindbrain and the midbrain and the forebrain. The hindbrain may be subdivided into medulla oblongata, the pons, and the cerebellum. Okay, the forebrain also be divided into the forebrain may also be subdivided. Forebrain also subdivided into diencephalon between the brain and in the central part of the forebrain and cerebellum. The brain stem, colloquitum, medulla oblongata, pons, and midbrain is the part of the brain that remains after the cerebral hemisphere and cerebellum are removed. Okay, cerebral hemisphere and cerebellum are removed. Hindbrain. So many people just confuse between cerebral and cerebellum. So what I did initially to understand is that cerebellum is a small letter. Cerebellum has small number of words, Therefore it is bigger. So smaller it is, the bigger the part is. So cerebral, it is smaller in words. So the big structure is actually called cerebral. And cerebellum, it consists of large number of words. So large number of words meaning the smaller part is called cerebellum. The smaller part is called cerebellum. So that was during my college time. I used this method to understand. Hindbrain. So hindbrain consists of medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is conical shape and pons. Okay, it consists of pons superior to the spinal cord. Inferiorly, it consists of neurons called nuclei. Conduct by ascending and descending nerve fibers. Okay, it consists of conduct by ascending and descending nerve fibers. Okay, it basically acts as a checkpoint. It basically acts as a checkpoint for ingoing and outgoing calls. Let's assume car to be the signals. Therefore, the checkpoint is medulla oblongata. So let's talk about pons. The pons is situated in the anterior surface of the cerebellum. Okay, inferior to the midbrain. Okay, inferior to the midbrain and superior to the medulla oblongata. The pons are the bridge. Pons basically means bridge, yeah. So this was a checkpoint, and the pons is basically a bridge. GFs is named from the large number of transverse fibers on the anterior aspect connecting two cerebral hemisphere. It connects two cerebral hemisphere. It also contains many nuclei ascending and descending nerve fibers. Okay, so pons is basically a bridge, and I bridge for the Latin, I guess. And it is called so because it consists of various transverse fibers and the fibers that goes up and down, and it also consists of various nuclei within it. So it is important. Cerebellum, the most important, the little brain. Cerebellum lies within the posterior part of the cranial fossa of the skull. Okay, posterior to the pons and medulla oblongata. It consists of two laterally placed hemispheres connected by median portions. Connected by the vermis. The cerebellum is connected to the midbrain by the superior cerebral peduncles, to the pons by the middle cerebral peduncles, and to the medulla oblongata by the inferior cerebral peduncles. The peduncles are composed of large bundles of nerve fibers connected to the cerebellum to the remainder of the nervous systems. The substrate of the cerebral hemisphere is called cortex and is composed of gray matters. The cerebral cortex is drawn into folds. The foliar separated by the surface cerebral hemisphere is called cortex and is composed of gray matters. The cerebral cortex is thrown into folds and or foliar separated by transverse fissures. Certain mass of gray matters are found in the inferior cerebellum embedded with the white matters. The largest of these is known as dentate nucleus. Okay, the medulla oblongata, the pons and the cerebellum. The pons and the cerebellum surrounds the cavity filled with the cerebral spinal cord. Okay, pons and the cerebellum surround the cavity with the cerebral spinal cord called the fourth ventricle. Okay, pons and cerebellum. Within the pons and cerebellum, there is a fourth ventricle, which consists of cerebral spinal cord. This is connected to the third ventricle by the cerebral aqueduct. Okay, inferior it is connected to the megaindex of the spinal cord. Inferior it is connected to the spinal cord. It conveys with the subaqueous space to the opening inferior part of the group. It is through the opening within the central nervous system can enter in the subaqueous space. Enter the subaqueous space. Totally covered the spinal cord. Totally covered the spinal cord. We want to go in detail. Yes, I want to go in detail. Okay. So let's go into this one is anterior, this one is the posterior root of ganglion. This is the posterior root of ganglion. This is ligamentum denticulum, and this one is transverse process. This was posterior ramus. This one is anterior ramus. This one is spinal nerve, and this was sympathetic ganglion. This is sympathetic trunk. This is gray ramus. This is white ramus. Midbrain. The midbrain is the narrowest part of the brain that connects the forebrain to the hindbrain. Okay, forebrain to the hindbrain, and the narrow cavity of the midbrain is called the cerebral aqueduct. Is the cerebral aqueduct. which connects the third ventricle and fourth ventricles. Okay, so the midbrain actually consists of several aqueduct that connects the third ventricle and fourth ventricle. Okay, which connects the third ventricle and fourth ventricles. The weight for the many nuclei and the bundles. It actually consists of many nuclei and the bundles. Nucleus and the bundles, so the ascending and descending fibers as well. So what is the difference between pons and midbrain? The difference between pons and midbrain is that pons did consist of transverse fibers. However, the midbrain only consists of ascending and descending fibers. So diencephalon. Diencephalon is almost completely hidden from the surface of the brain. It consists of dorsal thalamus and the ventral hypothalamus. The thalamus is large, egg-shaped mass gray matter that lies inside of the third ventricle. The anterior endothalamus forms the posterior boundary of the interventricular foramen, the opening between the third ventricle and lateral ventricles. The hypothalamus forms the lowermost part of the lateral wall and part of the third ventricles. The hypothalamus is completely hidden from the surface of the brain. It consists of dorsal thalamus and ventral hypothalamus. Dorsal means the posterior, okay, the ventral means the one that is in the anterior, this means the dorsal thalamus and the ventral hypothalamus. The thalamus is a large egg-shaped mass of a gray matter that lies in the either side of the third ventricle. Okay, that is present in lateral to the third ventricle. Those are present in lateral to the third ventricle. The anterior end of the thalamus forms the posterior boundary of the interventricular foramen. Thalamus forms the posterior boundary of the interventricular foramen. The anterior end of the thalamus forms the posterior boundary of the interventricular foramen. Interventricular foramen, lateral ventricular, third ventricular, fourth ventricular, whatever interventricular foramen. Interventricular foramen, okay. I will be noting this term. I don't know. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, consisting of two cerebral hemispheres, which are connected by a mass of white matter called as corpus callosum. Each hemisphere extends to the frontal occipital lobe in the skull, superior to the anterior posterior skulls. However, the tentorial cerebelli, the hemisphere is separated by deep belonging to the flux cerebelli. Photomicrograph of several large cells with the surrounding nuclei. So this one right here is the nerve cells. Okay, this one right here is the nerve cells, and this is nuclei of the nerve cells. So this is the head of the nerve cells. So this one is also a nerve cells. Okay, and this one is probably the axon of the nerve cells, and the surrounding structure that okay, the neuroglia. These are the neuroglia in my opinion. It is not given right here, but these are the neuroglia which are supporting cells. Okay, it is said that about there is presence of about 50 to 100. There's 50 to 100 billion synapses within the brain, which is so large in number that it could be compared with the number of stars in the Milky Way. It is so huge in number, so large in number. In case of single human being. Okay. This one is spinal cord, spinal. Sorry for the background noise. So we'll be taking 5 minutes break. I'll be back with within the 5 minutes. Okay. So I'm back with 5 minutes of break, and now listen. So where were we? We were at this. Okay, so what does it show? It shows the action of spinal cord in case of infant, I guess. Number A is for the fetus with the brain and spinal cord exposed on the posterior surface. Okay, note the spinal cord extend the full length of the vertebral column. So in case of infant, this is, suppose this is a vertebral column up to the hair, and this is spinal cord. The spinal cord is up, is equal to the vertebral column. In case of child, let's see in case of adult. This one is the figure of adult, and okay, yeah, okay, this is also the figure of adult. And okay, up to here there is a vertebral column, and up to here there is vertebral column. However, the spinal cord is up to here. The below it is just a phylum terminale. Okay, and it is attached to the coccyx bone. This is first lumbar vertebra. This is medulla. Okay, in which figures we can see medulla oblongata, foramen magnum. It's obviously the space in the skull, which we don't need to understand. These are the spinal segments. Spinal cord and meninges. Okay, green color is spinal cord and meninges. The level of lower end of spinal cord. Okay, this is the level of lower end of spinal cord. This is lower limit of the subarachnoid space. Head of spinal cord and covering meninges, showing the relationship to the surrounding structure. Okay, it shows the relationship to the surrounding structures. This is cervical segment, this is thoracic segment, this one is lumbosacral and coccygeal segment. Okay, the extent of the okay, this is the extent of a spinal cord up to the L1 level in case of an adult. This one right here, the straight line is actually the phylum terminale, and it extends up to the coccyx bone. This one is L5, the S1, S5, and SC1. This is phylum terminale. Okay. This is an arachnoid. Okay, this one is pia mater. This is arachnoid matter. Okay. DAP. It can be summarized in case of D, A, and P. This is dura mater, A for arachnoid matter, and P for pia mater. This one is pia mater. This is arachnoid matter, and this is obviously a dura mater. And this is ligamentum denticulatum. It's basically a what can we say? It is basically a ligament that connects the spinal cord to the side of the vertebral column, side of the, I just forgot the term. Intervertebral foramina. Ligamentum denticulatum connects the outer part of the spinal cord to the side of the ligament vertebral foramina. So it also consists of white matter and gray matter. As we all know, this is the white matter, and this gray structure is gray matter. White matter is white because it consists of a myelin sheath, and gray matter is gray because it consists of cells of the neurons. Sorry for the background noise. I need to close the door. Dura and arachnoid matter. This is conus medullaris. This is first lumbar spinal nerve. This is cauda equina. This is rootlet of spinal nerve. This is posterior ganglion, lower limb of the cervical space. This one right here is the sacrum. This is phylum terminale, coccygeal, and spinal nerve. This is coccyx. Brain, spinal cord, spinal nerves are seen in the posterior aspect. The transverse section of the spinal cord showing the entire posterior of the spinal cord to the meninges. Posterior view of the lower into the spinal cord and cauda equina showing the relation. Okay, so this one is right here is a cauda equina. Cauda equina in Latin means the horse's tail. Horse's tail. and it appears to be like a hostile. It is because during the infant life, the vertebra is of that of equal length of that of vertebral cord. No, sorry, the spinal cord is of that of equal length of, to that of vertebral canal. But and and just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute, guys. Just wait for a few minutes. Okay, Creative Commons and okay. Just a minute. Just ignore the background noise. Okay, I need to do something. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Okay, during the infant life, the vertebral length is spinal cord is of that of equal length of vertebral canal. Okay, so the spinal segment actually comes right through it. You're getting this? It comes right through it. But during the development, the spinal cord within the vertebral canal actually shifts upward. So when it shifts upward, the spinal segments will still be attached to the particular to the previous point. So it will give a structure like this. Previously it was like this. So yeah. So when it is shifted upward, it gives this type of appearance and will ultimately result in hostile-like structure. Therefore, it is called cauda equina. That's all. That is as simple as that. As simple as that. Transverse section through the thoracic region of spinal cord, showing the anterior and posterior root of spinal nerve and the meninges. Okay. Posterior view of the lower and inner of the spinal cord and cauda equina, showing the relationship with the lumbar vertebra, sacrum and coccyx. White matter. This one is white matter. This is central canal. This is gray matter. Okay. This one segment of this one is whole segment of spinal cord. Okay, this is posterior root of spinal cord. This is posterior root of spinal nerve. This is posterior root of ganglion, the spinal nerve. Posterior ramus of the spinal nerve, anterior ramus of the spinal nerve, anterior root of the spinal. Okay, anterior root of the spinal nerve, anterior rootless of the spinal nerve. Posterior median sulcus. This one is posterior median sulcus. Okay, posterior median septum. Posterior median septum. So this one is posterior median septum. Posterior white column, obviously. Posterior gray column. Okay, gray commissure in between. Okay, it is connecting the both the gray column, so it's called gray commissure. This one is anterior gray commissure, I guess. This is lateral white column. Okay, lateral white column. This is central canal. Anterior gray column. This one is anterior gray column. This is spinal nerve. This is anterior white column. This is anterior median nerve. This is anterior median fissure. There's always me. Spinal nerve. So this is spinal nerve, this is posterior ganglion, this is lateral white column, this is central canal, this is anterior gray column, this is gray commissure, this is posterior gray column, this is posterior median septum, this is posterior white column, this is lateral white column, this is posterior ganglion, this is spinal nerve, this is anterior white column, this is anterior median fissure. Okay, this one is a parietal bone, this is central sulcus. Okay, this is parietal lobe, this is frontal lobe, this is frontal lobe. Bone, this is frontal bone, basically this is frontal lobe, this is occipital bone, and this is occipital lobe. There's nothing new in it. This is lateral sulcus. Okay, the temporal lobe, this is temporal bone, this is temporal lobe, this is temporal bone. Okay, so let's see the structures. This is longitudinal fissure, this is frontal lobe, this is olfactory bulb, olfactory tract, this is optic nerve. The optic chiasma must be right here. Okay, this one is optic chiasma. Optic tract is just posterior to it. And this, okay, I knew this mammillary bodies. Okay, mammillary bodies, come on, it looks like something mammillary. So this one is mammillary body, and this is the midbrain. This is so it shows the various cranial nerves. This one is temporal lobe, this is infundibulum is present right here. Infundibulum, anterior purpose substance, tuber cinerum, okay, mammillary body. Okay, we know transverse fibers of pons spirale. This is transverse fibers of pons spirale. This is pons spirale. This is flocculus of cerebellum. This is olive. This is roots of hypoglossal nerve. Roots of hypoglossal nerve. Okay, these are the roots of the hypoglossal nerve. Median fissures. This is the median fissure. It is in between, and it's called median fissures. And at the side of it there is pyramid. Okay, the median fissure is actually continuous up to the spinal cord. This one is medulla oblongata. This is cerebral hemisphere. This is occipital lobe. This is spinal cord essential nerves. This is essential nerve, roots of vagus nerves, glossopharyngeal nerve, vestibular gland, root of facial nerve, okay, root of facial nerves. So I need to know where those things comes from. Okay, oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, trigeminal nerve, sensory root of trigeminal nerve, abduction nerve, roots of nerves. What is this? I think there's a printing mistake, but there's nothing new in it. We have always watched this. I just wanted to know. So this one must be a ventricular system. So let's say, okay, this is gene of the corpus callosum. This one is corpus callosum. It connects the both hemisphere of the brain. This is gene of the corpus callosum. This one is splenium, and this one right here must be a fornix. Just below the corpus callosum there is a fornix, and this balding interthalamic connection. This one is interthalamic connection. It connected to both of the thalamus. The thalamus, however, in this person is transected. And this one is hypophysis, and this one is rostrum. Great cerebral brain. This is great cerebral brain. This is superior. This one is superior medullary velum. Cavity of this one right here is the cavity of a fourth ventricle. It is actually present in between the pons varioli and the cerebellum. Cortex of cerebellum, intermedullary velum, which we don't need to understand. This is central sulcus, central canal. Okay, this is where the pineal body. Pineal body, very important. Pineal body. Okay, pineal body or pineal gland. It is present right here. Okay. This is again. This is what. This is interthalamic connections. So this is humerus. No need to understand. Thalamus. Okay, this one is thalamus. This one is actually showing the right median part of the right thalamus. This one is actually showing the median part of the right thalamus. This is hypophysis. This is rostrum. Anterior commissure. This is lamina terminalis, optic chiasma, tuberous. Okay. Surface layer of each hemisphere, the cortex is composed of a gray matter. Okay, composed of a gray matter. The cerebral cortex is thrown into the folds, or the gyri separated by fissures. Okay, I need to understand this again. The surface layer is hemisphere. The surface layer of each hemisphere, the cortex is composed of gray matter. Okay, it consists of gray matter. The cerebral cortex is thrown into folds. Okay, there is folds, therefore giving the gyri and separated by fissures or sulci. Okay, the surface area of the cortex by this means, okay, the number of large sulci are conveniently used to subdivide the surface of each hemisphere into the, okay, it is done by human beings. It is not there or subdivided basically by the human beings. It is a means of studying a different part of the brain. So what the human, so I'll be talking about it. Just after I study this. The lobes are named from the bones of the cortical cranium on which they lie. Within the hemisphere is a central core of white matter containing several large masses of gray matter. The basal nuclei or ganglia. Okay, the fan-shaped collection of nerve fibers termed the coron. Okay, within the hemisphere, a central core of white matter containing several large masses of gray matter. Okay, within the hemisphere, there is appearance of a large amount of white matter. However, there is also appearance of gray matter. Gray matter, along with the appearance of dorsal nuclei or the ganglia, or fan-shaped collections of fibers termed the coronal radiata, passes in the white matters to form the cerebral cortex to the brainstem, to and from to the brainstem. So coronal radiata basically act as a highway that connects both the brain and the, okay, so I have an idea. So let's suppose this is a big city, and this is a sub city, the little smaller one, and and there's no other city around here. So there is basically a road that connects these two cities, which allows vehicles to transfer from this part to this part and this part to this part. So coronal radiator basically is that particular road that carries the information from the smaller city to the bigger city. In this case, it carries information from the brainstem to the cerebellum. Okay, it is basically a highway. The coronal radiata converges on the basal nuclei. The coronal radiata converges on the basal nuclei and passes between them as internal capsule. The basal converges, okay, converges on the basal nuclei and passes them as an internal capsule. It converges into the basal nuclei and passes between them as the internal capsule. So I don't understand this term. It actually converges. So coronal radiata converges into the basal nuclei. So it will be more easier if I could view the pictures. Okay, so this one must be a brainstem, and this is coronal radiata, which is taking the information to the various part of the brain. Internal capsule converges into the internal capsule. Okay, so from upward to downward going, it actually converges into the internal capsule. Okay, why it is? No. When it goes from upward part to the downward part, it actually converges into the narrow opening called internal capsule. Right here, if this is road, then there must be a okay. So suppose this road. How to understand? Come on. So let's suppose it converges. So there might be a multiple way to get to this city, but at a particular point it converges, and the particular point is called internal capsule. Okay, this is very good way. I could use this sometime. Tail nucleus situated on the middle side of the capsule referred as cordate nucleus. The tail nucleus situated on the middle side of the internal capsule is referred to as cordate nucleus. And the lens-shaped nucleus on the lateral side of the internal capsule is called lentiform nucleus. The lens-shaped nucleus on the lateral side of the internal capsule is called lentiform. Lens-shaped nucleus. So this is lens-shaped nucleus. This is lens-shaped nucleus. Lens lateral side of the internal capsule. So lens-shaped nucleus on the lateral side is a lentiform nucleus. So we knew the term internal capsule, coronary radiator, and lentiform nucleus. The cavity present within each cerebral hemisphere is called lateral ventricle. Okay. The lateral ventricles communicate with the third ventricle through the interventricular foramina. During this process, development the cerebellum becomes enormously enlarged and overhangs the diencephalon, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Structures of the brain. Unlike the spinal cord, brain is composed of an inner core of white matter. Unlike the spinal cord, the brain is composed of an inner core of white matter, which is surrounded by an outer covering of gray matter. However, as mentioned previously, certain important masses of gray matter are situated deeply within the white matter. Okay, for example, within the cerebellum there are gray cerebral nuclei, and within the cerebrum there is gray thalamic coated netiform nuclei. I don't need to go to this. However, as mentioned previously, certain important masses of gray matter are situated deeply within the white matters. As mentioned previously, certain important masses of gray matter are situated deeply within the gray matter. However, as mentioned previously, certain important masses of gray matter are situated deeply within the white matters. For example, within the cerebellum there are gray matters nuclei, and within the cerebrum there is gray matter nuclei. Certain important masses of gray matter are situated deeply within the white matters. Okay, this principle. The cerebellum doesn't only consist of a white matter, it actually consists of gray matter as well, and gray matter is actually present within the white matter. For example, within the cerebellum there is gray matter such as gray cerebral nuclei, and within the gray cerebral nuclei in case of cerebellum, and within the cerebrum there is gray thalamic coated and lentiform nuclei. Lentiform nuclei. Okay. Major division of peripheral neuron system. The peripheral. I don't think we need to study the peripheral nervous system. Cranial. So we must study the cranial and spinal. And these courses are very important. Very, very important courses on the spinal cord. Okay, let's study what is given in brief. The cranial and spinal nerves are made up of bundles of nerves supported by the connective tissues. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Okay. And pass to the foramen of the skull, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves, which leaves the spinal cord and pass out the intervertebral column in the vertebral column. The spinal nerves are named according to the region of the vertebral column, with which they are associated: eighth cranial, eighth cervical, 2 cervical, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. Note there are 8 cervical nerves and 7 cervical vertebra, and there are 1 coccygeal nerve, and there are 4 coccygeal vertebra. Each spinal nerve is connected to the spinal cord by 2 roots, anterior roots and the posterior roots. The anterior roots consist of bundles of the nerve fibers carrying nerve impulses away from the central nervous systems. Such nerve fibers are called efferent nerve fibers, and those efferent nerve fibers go to the skeletal muscle and cause them to contract, called motor nerve fibers. Efferent nerve fibers and motor nerve fibers take the information from the brain towards the muscle. However, the efferent nerve fibers actually take the information from this muscle to the brain, and brain act as the coordinating systems. We all know this from our childhood. Their cells of origin lie in the anterior gray horn of the spinal cord. Anterior gray horn of the spinal cord. Okay. Suppose this is spinal cord. It has various horns. This one is posterior horn. Let's suppose this one is a anterior horn. Now the cells of origin, which means the head of the cells of origin, actually lies in this particular part in case of motor neurons. Okay, motor fibers. The posterior root consists of bundle of nerve fibers called afferent fibers. Okay. Efferent motor fibers and afferent. Okay. That carries nervous impulses to the central nervous systems. The posterior root consists of bundle of nerve fibers called afferent fibers, which impulse to the central nervous system, because these fibers are connected with conveying information about transparent impulse and vibration. They are called sensory fibers. The cell bodies of these fibers are situated in the swelling of the posterior root called posterior root ganglion. The spinal root passes from the spinal cord to the level of retrospective intervertebral foramina. Moving from the spinal created from the spinal nerve. Here the motor nerve and spinal nerve becomes mixed together. Thus the spinal nerve is made up of mixed. Because of the disappropriate growth in length of this particular column during development compared with that of spinal cord, the length of the roots increases progressively from above to downward. In the upper cervical region, the spinal nerve roots are short and run almost horizontally, but the root of the lumbar and sacral nerves below the level of termination of the spinal cord lower part of this first lumbar vertebra in this root. Just varium terminale. Scora equina. We always study this. There is difference between motor fibers, efferent fibers, and the afferent fibers. Efferent fibers, okay. Previously, I used to think they're motor nerves. Sorry. Previously, I used to think that what the hell? Mistake. Previously, I used to think that motor fiber and the afferent fibers are the same, but what? So, but these are actually different things. Afferent fibers. Okay, let's see. This what's it again? The anterior consists of bundles of nerve fibers carrying out impulses from the central nervous systems. Such nerve fibers are called efferent fibers. From the central nervous system, it is called efferent fibers. The efferent fibers that go to the skeletal muscle and cause them to contract are called motor nerves. Okay. So efferent is from brain to the spinal cord, from spinal cord to the periphery. It is actually a motor fiber. However, the afferent fiber actually is different. Afferent fiber, it carries the impulses to the central nervous system because these are concerned with conveying motions as a of 20% vibrations. Okay, the cell bodies of this nerve are swelling of the posterior root called posterior root ganglion. Posterior root ganglion. Afferent fibers. Efferent fibers. Motor neurons. Right here. Ganglion video and the sensor ganglia synapse and cranial nerves and autonomic ganglia. Sensor ganglia are fused. Ganglia may divide into sensor ganglia and spinal nerves and the cranial nerves and autonomic ganglia. Okay. Sensory ganglia of spinal nerves and ganglia of cranial nerves and autonomic ganglia. Three parts. Autonomic ganglia is different. Sensory ganglia are fusiform swellings situated on the posterior root of each spinal nerve. Posterior root of each spinal nerve, just proximal to the root's junction with the corresponding anterior root. Now I need to see the figure. They are referred to as posterior root ganglia. Similar ganglions that are also found along the course of cranial nerve 5 7, 8, 9, and 10. I got sensor gain nervous nerves. 10 thoracic vertebra. Got to the brain notice one got covered with the piano. Bonus minerals, first one vertebra, final terminal. Second foramina. 10th rib. Dura and arachnoid matter. Different posterior rotor spine nerves forming cauda equina. Posterior sacrum foramina. Development of nervous system. So often you can consider along the course of different nerve fibers of the autonomic nervous systems. They are found in the paravertebral sympathetic chains. Paravertebral is around the vertebra. Sympathetic chains, 14.1 autonomic nerves of the great visceral association autonomy. Different within the wall of the various viscera. Meanwhile, the proliferation of cells are separate in the negative causes direct and form three primary groups. Okay? The middle cells and living vesicles, the rest of the tube lumbus and remain smaller than in diameter that will form a small part. Those are the spinal cord and brain. Spinal cord and brain. So, that's one of those. Skulls, because of what is all spinal cord injuries. You've got a different level of